Oh, it says I'm live. Hey, hey there, troublemakers. Um, yeah, okay. I'm going to try to do a more extended live. I'm so tired. Your girl is so tired. Um, it was a long, long day today. Uh, Colin Strickland took the stand after lunch. I was tweeting till my fingers ached. It was very intense. I'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to start at the top of the day, tell you how the day went, and yeah, give you a good recap for what I experienced today in the Kaitlin Armstrong trial. Okay, let's see. There's a sketch artist in the gallery today. I think that there were rumors at the start of the day that Colin would be testifying because there were people who were sitting there who were saying, could you move out of this row because my friend Colin is testifying today. I didn't encounter that, but some people I knew that were there did. The sketch artist, you won't be seeing his sketches online or anywhere unless and until he decides to sell them to someone, which I think is straight up how he should be doing things. He wasn't paid to be there, is my impression. He was there of his own, sort of get up and go. No cameras in the courtroom. I'm an artist. Why don't I go see where this leads me? And his sketches are beautiful and so evocative. Really, really show the. He let me see them. I talked to him for a bit. Show the emotion and the feelings of the person. It was really, really impressive. Definitely I hope that he gets, maybe gets a good little compensation package for his sketches. Sweet guy, too, by the way. Let's see, what else? Kaitlin came into the courtroom much faster today. I don't know. I still don't know what's going on with her. I still think she has a vest on. It's just my take on things. Daniel Shear, sorry if it gets a little bumpy. I'm looking through my notes. Daniel Shear is the first witness who testified. He's a neighbor. So if you came out of Kaitlin Cash's and walked just a very short distance to the end of their long back alley, crossed the street and went to the back alley for the next block, he was a couple of doors down in that block. And he had basically had a security camera that recorded Colin Strickland's motorcycle going by at about 8:36. I think I updated my map on Twitter or X, depending on what you want to call it, whatever. The defense asked Shear whether the police came to his door and how long it took them to contact him and so on and so forth. So I think a big part of the strategy is definitely criticizing the investigators on how little canvassing they did. But man, I think that the state's doing such a good job on this case. They're picking up on things and they're circling back around to them when they get a chance and when it's appropriate. And while I'm on this little, kind of opinion soapbox, I feel like their pacing is really smart. I think having Colin Strickland testify on a Friday right before the jurors go home and giving them the entire weekend to think about it is brilliant. I think that we saw the body cam. Now, the jurors didn't get to see much of it. They only got to see 3 minutes of it, but we got to see 17 minutes of body cam video that homicide investigators were wearing when they went and told Colin Strickland that Mo Wilson was dead. They didn't tell him what happened, how she died, but they didn't call him ahead of time and tell him they were coming. He was puttering around in his garage, and they wandered up his driveway and said, "Hey man, can we talk to you for a minute?" And told him. And the juxtaposition of how he looked and responded in that video versus how he looked today was stark. He looks really broken. Let's put it that way. I don't want to put a value judgment on it. I feel terrible for the guy. And I know that he's a very divisive character in this story for a lot of people, but the jurors are 14 people who probably don't know much, if anything, about the details of this case. And I'm telling you, he came across as broken. It was sad. So in the video, which they did get to see 3 minutes of, you see a tall, athletic, fairly, poised, if a bit distracted because he's got a lot on his mind and he has no idea what's about to hit him, guy. He's utterly shocked at the news. And, today you see the same man with, sort of a scruffy beard and red eyes and not making eye contact with anybody. And sometimes I think he even had his eyes closed. Like he was looking down and they almost seemed closed. I'll tell you more about that when we get to it. But the state's doing a really, really good job with this case, y'all. Okay. Then we moved on to Jason Ayers. Oh, it's Mr. Troublemaker. How you doing, honey?
Yeah.
Mr. Troublemaker has been making me an excellent sandwich every day. It's delicious. I love it. I make the bread. He makes the sandwiches. It's a great compromise. So Jason Ayers, let me tab over it here and see if anybody has anything to say. No. Okay. Not so far. All righty. Jason Ayers was the next witness. He's currently a sergeant with APD. He was in the homicide division for a little over 2 years, and he was kind of a support who came along with the guy who, I guess they say, caught the case on TV, the guy to whom this homicide case was assigned. That particular investigator is the least experienced was at the time the least experienced of all of the investigators on the team. But the state also made it pretty clear that you don't get invited to be in the homicide division unless you got chops. So to be the least experienced homicide investigator it isn't really saying much. It's saying that you're still really freaking good at what you do and you got invited to work homicide. So again, state's doing a good job. Let's see. I should have boldfaced this stuff in my notes. So the way Ayers read Colin Strickland's initial reaction to, what is this? What is the main guy's name? Spittler? I think it's Spittler. Asking him if he knew Mo Wilson was, Ayers' take on it was that Colin was maybe being a little deceptive. That is not what I thought at all. And most of the people around me took it the same way I did. I'll get to it when I get to it in my notes, but in fact, I think just the way that Spittler asked the question was confusing. And that's why Strickland responded the way he did. It just took a minute for it to click for him. Okay, now, at this point, the defense interjected and said that they wanted to voir dire the witness and voir dire the video, the 17-minute video. So, of course, the judge said yes. I guess she could say no if she wanted to, but she said yes. Jury was excused. So what that means, they did a proffer. And what that means is the state continued and stepped through the questions they were going to ask the witness and put the video on just the way that they would in front of the jury. But the defense gets to watch and then lodge their objections. I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand exactly where the line is between letting somebody get a proffer and not. But in this case, they did get a proffer. I assume it's because they wanted, it's in cases where they want to lodge a very large objection so that we can all suss it out before we let the jury back in, agree, or have the judge rule on what's allowed, what's going to happen, and then move forward. So the state questioned Ayers a little bit more and then played the 17-minute video. Okay, so we got to see the 17-minute video. And then at the end of the 17-minute video, Judge Kennedy said, okay, I want you to go to this particular timestamp because I'm only going to let you play a little bit of this. So they went to the timestamp that she requested. She sort of nailed down exactly where she needed them to stop playing any audio on that 17-minute video and said, look, up until here, these are spontaneous utterances by Colin Strickland. But at that point, the investigators start to interrogate him, and we can't have that. I don't understand why. I guess it's just different legal territory once you're in an investigation. But it was all related to spontaneous utterances. And let me look at my notes real quick. Hello, kitty. I'll get to it in a minute. But the judge ruled that they get the first 3 minutes of audio, and then they could play the other 14 minutes silently if they wanted to. They didn't do that, thank goodness. I don't think the jury would have appreciated it either. There was a point in the video that we were allowed to watch that the jury didn't get to see pretty late in the video after he had taught. Okay, so they come up, they tell him what's going on, and I'll sort of describe that a little bit better in a minute. The first 3 minutes that the jury got to see, but then after they start talking to him and interrogating him, if you will, it wasn't an interrogation, but it was more of a dialogue with questions and answers. He answered every single question they asked. He answered in depth, with detail. I mean, it was really interesting and sad to watch him ride this shockwave of this person is dead. I don't know what happened. I was the last person to see her alive. Probably thinking, what does this mean for me? Oh my gosh, my friend is dead. Hang on, I have to move a cat. And then just the deep sorrow that his friend was dead. So really far into it, 14, 15 minutes, I don't even know. He kind of stops for a minute and he said, so she's passed away? Like it was really starting to sink in. And one of the homicide investigators said, yes, she is. And he cried a little bit. I mean, of course he cried, but it was, I don't know, it was weird and it was very genuine. It was sad. And so yeah, he cried a little bit at that point, like not tears coming out, but kept wiping his eyes and rubbing his face. And then it ended. The video ended. She's passed away is how I wrote it. That is what he said. He describes his romantic relationship with Mo as limited to October 2021. We've heard that consistently from everybody. Nobody, not a single witness in this trial has said or implied in any way whatsoever that Colin Strickland and Mo Wilson were having an affair or anything like that. Every single person has said they had a fling in October 2021. Beyond that, it didn't last. They weren't even that serious. No romance since then, before or after. Present sense impressions. That was the other legalese that came up as far as the reason why the state wanted to get the entire 17 minutes in. The state also said Colin Strickland will be testifying and can be cross-examined, but the judge still said, no, it has to stop at the 3-minute mark. We went on a break because they had to go put the mute on the video, make sure that they were doing it correctly. Ayers said that he saw a woman pass by one of the windows, looked like maybe it was a kitchen window, several times while they were talking to Colin Strickland. Obviously, that was Kaitlin Armstrong, wondering why there were police talking to her boyfriend in the driveway. Ayers confirms that Colin had no knowledge whatsoever or advance warning that the investigators were going to come talk to him. This was where, again, the state is thinking on their feet so incredibly well. The prosecutor switched gears and asked Ayers about whether it's always possible to do extensive canvassing in the first days of an investigation, which gave Ayers an opportunity to say, look, we have this many people in the department. We prioritize things this way. In some cases, it might make more sense to do extensive canvassing. In other cases, it makes more sense for us to go track down leads and talk to people of interest as quickly as we possibly can, so nobody gets away. So that was good for the state. It was very effective. So we got to watch the first 3 minutes of that video 3 times. So I wrote down pretty much verbatim exactly how that very initial interrogation went. The law enforcement officer said, "Do you know Anna Mo?" And Colin says, "Anna Mo?" Again, he had no idea. There had been problems with vagrants in their neighborhood. The house across the street had been ransacked. Those were Colin Strickland's words. There's a large homeless, vagrant was also his term. There's a large homeless population in the area on a creek nearby. He had absolutely no reason whatsoever to think that these guys were here because of Mo Wilson. So he says, "Anna Mo?" And the officer says, "Everybody calls her Mo. Monique, Monique. Everyone calls her Mo Wilson." And then it clicks. And one of them says something about gravel cycling, and then from then on, it's clear that he knows who they're talking about. Let's see. They played a little bit of the rest of the video only without sound on it. The defense didn't object. I don't really think it amounted to much. And they did describe what was going on. Like, they played a part where he went and looked in the saddlebag of his motorcycle to see if Mo had left a jacket in there. And then they played a part where he wandered back into the house and asked Ayers what he was doing. And he said he was going inside to get some shoes on so he could go with them down to the police department to give a statement. So Ayers went away to be part of, I guess, to be part of Strickland giving a statement. Comes back again. He's just support on this. This is the only day this particular witness worked this case. Only today. I assume they'll get the lead guy in eventually, or maybe they won't. Or maybe the defense will call the lead guy in and then grill him and try to convince the jury that he's not good at his job. But for what it's worth, this particular witness had only worked this case this day and no other day. He was a helper, assistance for the case. So he goes to the police department. I assume he's there or supporting whoever and doing whatever Strickland's giving a statement. So he comes back to Strickland's house to hang around and wait for the search warrant to show up. At that point, Kaitlin wasn't allowed to be in the house anymore. I guess she'd gone away. She shows back up with someone that she's referring to as her lawyer. The person that she brought that was her lawyer was actually Colin and Caitlin's lawyer that was more related to their real estate business. Kaitlin was a yoga instructor, but she was also a realtor. Or real estate professional. I have no idea if she was a realtor registered trademark, but she did real estate stuff, and she did a lot of it with Colin Strickland, and he made some reference on the stand today about some lawsuit that they were involved in related to real estate, and she was in the middle of flipping a house at one point when they had broken up at one time, and it wasn't done yet, and so she didn't have anywhere to go because the house wouldn't be done for 2 months. They had real estate stuff going on, so this was their real estate lawyer that came back to the house with her and stood in the driveway with her while they had to allow the police to execute the search warrant on the house. They showed some photos from the house. The main thing we got to see was a box on he assumed it was the owner's bedroom and not one of the secondary bedrooms, shelf of the clothes closet that had 2 guns in it. And a bunch of ammunition, but it was firing range ammunition. It was test range ammunition, practice ammunition. It wasn't anything. He said it was really cheap ammunition. You'd use it when you go to the range. So there was a bunch of it, but I mean, I'm sure when you go to the range, you shoot the gun a lot of times. I wouldn't know, but that's what that was about. Sorry for the pauses. I'm so tired. It was such a long day today. Right, the cheaper ammunition. Okay, so this is a local Austin girl's perspective on things. Ayers said, so there were McBride's price stickers on the ammunition, and Ayers says, well, that's a gun shop. Maybe in South Austin? It's not. It's in North Austin. It's off North Lamar and 30th. My father was really into guns, as was my grandfather, and they got all their guns from McBride's, which has been in the Austin area since 1960, for what it's worth. So when Colin and Kaitlin, which we find out later, rode their bicycles to go buy guns, whatever, Colin, I'm assuming, maybe Kaitlin, chose McBride's, not a big box store. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting little detail. There were a whole lot of questions by the defense of Sergeant Ayers about iPads and such, some that he collected, some that he didn't. Ayers just said if it wasn't on the inventory, it wasn't seized. So there were iPads from the house that weren't seized. Oh, baby. Hang on, cat moment. Come here. Well, come here. Let's take care of you. Here we go. Come here. Come get this. Come here. There. There you go. Sorry about that. All right, cat gets what cat wants. Right. If it was not on the inventory, it was not seized. I'm reading Alex Caprariello's tweet right now. He's with News Nation. When I miss something, I go look at his Twitter feed because he's tweeting everything, man. That guy, if you want to really follow beat by beat this case, follow his Twitter. X, whatever. So he said, Ayers says, oh, wait. He said, the defense questions why these electronic devices were not seized at the time of the search warrant. Defense pushes Ayers to admit that evidence can be destroyed if it is not collected. So why didn't you pull up the iPads? Well, what could have been on the iPads? Blah, 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 blah. Whatever. Again, I'm doing so many things at once. I didn't notice it. No idea if it was effective. Kind of think it probably wasn't. Sorry. But I mean, you have stuff with Apple on the iCloud, is my understanding. I don't have Apple products. And so I doubt there was much on the iPads that was of concern. The defense made a really good point. They said basically Colin Strickland had plenty of time to have a conversation with Kaitlin Armstrong when he went back into the house to get his shoes. That was a good one. That one landed well. It definitely got my gears going. Okay, so next. Hi, Raylan. I got a person who chatted. There's 6 of you here. Hello. This is so weird for me being live. All right. The next witness was Moriah Guevara. She used to be a crime scene specialist with APD. Now she works in the tax industry. She has switched gears, has a totally different tax technology consulting, has a totally different job. The defense did ask her about that, and they were like, well, why don't you do why don't you do police work anymore? And she goes, career change. She was not happy to be there. Her answers were very brief and to the point, very correct, very above board, very buttoned up, but man, she did not want to be there. She really did not want to be there. It's hard to explain. Annoyed, borderline snarky, just like a lot of well, that's how we do it. She read from her report, borderline read from her report. She's really not supposed to refer to it, but she was kind of just sitting there reading it and nobody objected. So cool, that works. She was put on the stand in order to enter into evidence the photo she took of the Jeep and of inside of Colin's house. There's a lot of interesting stuff, I guess. This is where the defense was hammering on the fact that there was some technology left behind. And the other thing is, a lot of the tablets seem to be like tablets related to mounting a tablet to the top of your Peloton and tracking your bike ride or something. I don't know. Whatever. The most interesting, so there's two things that were interesting to me. When she took photos of the inside of the Jeep, the seats in the back were folded down and there was a big table back there with some stools. I doubt we can see that on the video. I don't think it really matters. But if there's even the remotest possibility, we can see it on the many security cam videos that we've looked at. That would be yet another way to prove it's her Jeep. I have not heard any commentary about license plates. I don't know if the defense is going to try to convince us that, well, maybe that's not her Jeep. It sure seems like that's where they're going. Let's see. So this was weird, but explained better later. So she took a picture of a table with about a dozen ID cards and credit cards, 5 or 6 $100 bills, which is odd to some people, not odd to others, whatever. They look like crisp, fresh $100 bills, no idea why. And then Kaitlin Armstrong's passport, which does not expire until 2031. Kaitlin Armstrong's passport card, and Christine Armstrong's passport card. Passport card is a little card, sort of colored and decorated similarly to a passport, but it can be only used to go to Canada or Mexico on a land crossing or on a sea crossing. So think cruises. So it can't be used to fly. She couldn't have used her sister's passport card to fly to Costa Rica. This was at about 5 p.m. the day following the murders. Turns out, hi baby. It turns out that her sister had been living in Austin until like January. So this was only 4 months later. That kind of explains maybe why she had her sister's passport card. So that made my radar go off. And then right later I realized it's probably not a big deal. Let me check back in on you guys. Okay, cool. So she didn't find any fingerprints on the gun. Whatever, but that's what happened. They asked her if it was unusual to not find fingerprints on a gun, and she said, no, it's not unusual. I did not see any. I did observe an oily substance on the firearms that was noteworthy. And again, this is Alex Caprariello's tweet. Let's see. I said her answers are short and to the point, and on the transcript it might seem neutral, but her demeanor seemed annoyed. She didn't look at the jury at all. She really just looked at whichever attorney was questioning her. The defense asked about some foreign currency that was also on the table. I didn't catch it. I didn't notice it, and they didn't ever resolve where it was from. Would have been interesting to know. I'm not sure where they were going with it. The only other, so we broke for lunch. The only other person who testified today, very briefly before Colin Strickland took the stand, was Kaylee R. Helger, who was the supervisor at Pool Burger, and she simply established via the security cam at the Pool Burger and via receipts that Colin and Mo Wilson had gone to Pool Burger. Right. So Colin has a very scruffy, but not full beard. I thought it was full beard. I tweeted it was a full beard. I don't know, facial hair. But he has a scruffy, kind of a couple of days growth beard. Apparently what it is. He was wearing kind of a putty colored shirt and some maybe black or brown jeans. He initially looked and sounded sad, nervous, and weary. He did not look at the jury. He looked down, or he looked at the attorney from the state who was questioning him. He spoke very, very softly, sometimes barely above a whisper. They had to ask him to speak up many, many times. At one point he said, I'm trying. At one point he was kind of covering his mouth and the mic was right here. And the court reporter said, I really need you to move your hand. I cannot hear what you're saying. When he was asked what he used to do for a living during this time, he said, I was riding a bicycle in circles. And the state's attorney said, well, you do that pretty well, don't you? And he said, well, some people say so. So just depending on your opinion on him, it was kind of self-pitying or just completely defeated. I mean, did he want to be there? No, he did not want to be there. But my read on it was that because it's really, really hard and really, really sad. Colin and Kaitlin met via a dating app in 2019. She was not into cycling at the time. She got into cycling because he encouraged her to get into cycling. And he said, she was a natural. I think he said she is a natural athlete. He said she was pretty good at it when she put her mind to it. He also said she did not work at it hard enough to get really, really good at it. 5 months after they started dating in 2019, they broke up and described the relationship as tumultuous. But when COVID hit, they got back together and he said fell into a routine. She moved in late 2020 when her apartment flooded during a freeze. So December 2020 or January 2021, somewhere in that era of time. We've had so many freezes in Austin. I don't remember which freeze that was. It wasn't snowpocalypse because that was in February, but her apartment was damaged. She had no water. She had no electricity. At that time, it was hard to find a place to rent in Austin. That I absolutely remember. So it just made sense for her to move in with him. He said he was opposed to moving in together. She did have a place that was supposed to be done in 2 months. And so I think his attitude was maybe she can move into her own place at that point. He said, and I quote, "It was not designed to be long-term, but it ended up being long-term." And the state used this. Actually, the state echoed back to him the term tumultuous, and also it was caring and loving. I don't remember whether the terms caring and loving came from the state or from Colin, but he agreed that it was both of those things at the same time. He said, and I quote, "I wasn't sure we were compatible as long-term life partners." He said that even when Kaitlin was living with him, there were, quote, "intermittent, very short periods," close quote, when they were broken up, but she did not move out during those times. So very on and off again, very up and down. At one point, so this is a story that he told on the after being prompted by the state. The state was pulling all of this out of him. Oh, well, so did you sort of become friends with a woman in Colorado at one point? I have many female friends. He didn't say that with arrogance. He also at one point said, "I have many male friends within the cycling community." The guy was kind of a rock star. He had all kinds of friends. He was going bike riding with everybody. But once he figured out what the state was getting at, he was agreeing with, yes, I had this female friend in Colorado. That relationship never became romantic, but he went to Colorado, and at one point, after he had spent time with this female friend in Colorado, he told Kaitlin that he had spent time with her. He said, and I quote, "I was attempting to be transparent." So he was still in Colorado, texted her, told her he had spent time with this woman. Kaitlin replied to his text, letting her know that he had spent time with this woman, with a photo of the woman wearing, he said, pants and a brassiere. That's how Colin Strickland put it. What this was a photo that the woman had sent to Colin Strickland 10 months previous. She just sent it to him. He didn't share it with anybody. He didn't post it anywhere. Somehow Kaitlin got a hold of it. And when he said, "By the way, I spent time with this woman," her reply via text was the picture that she had apparently gotten onto his phone and taken off of his phone, or he admitted she was better at technology than him, so maybe everything that was going onto his phone was being mirrored onto the iCloud, and she simply went there and found it. He found that to be, let's see, how did he put it? He was angry at her somewhat unfair response. She was angry, and it led to a text confrontation. It made him hesitant, quote, "hesitant to inform her of all of my actions moving forward." He makes it clear that it was not a romantic interest with this Colorado woman or meeting, but that was maybe, the implication was that was when he started hiding things from Kaitlin because he tried to be transparent and it backfired. So they jumped around a lot. The state jumped around a lot, so it gets a little confusing. I'm going to try to streamline it as I go. I will tell you that more than once, Colin said that in May of 2022, when the murder occurred, he felt that his relationship with Kaitlin was stable and calm. He said that more than once. He was prompted to say that more than once by the state. So he met Mo Wilson at a 3-day bike ride in September of 2021. He described her as, and I quote, "an exceptional female racer and, quote, an immense talent." They asked, what was the point of the friendship? And he said, and I quote, She was obviously going to be an immense talent, and one part of my goal was to connect with her. One part of my goal was to connect her to as many resources as she could get. And then he went on about that a little bit, and then said she had a casual approach to cycling that I admired. So he was a pretty big deal at this point, and I think he was trying to mentor her and help her. And she was really meteoric rise, just up and coming. She was a natural athlete. Her parents are athletes. She had been a champion skier. And I thought that this comment, she had a casual approach to cycling that I admired, was really very sweet in a way. It was an interesting explanation of why he did admire her so much. So he wanted to help her. He wanted to help her get sponsorships and so on. And these communities can be extremely cliquish, and I'm sure the roadmap is not clear. So, I mean, it was really kind of cool of him to try to help her out. So let me see what I can skip, because this will go on as long as court went on today. There was a ride that they did. They did a mountain bike ride. So gravel racing is not the same as mountain bike riding. But him and some friends, including Mo, did a mountain bike ride at some point in the history of their relationship. I think 2020, 2021, somewhere back in there. Kaitlin was not invited. She was very angry about that. But he very dryly said that she wasn't invited because she had just gotten her mountain bike and she didn't have even the most basic of skills that she needed to do the ride. Just, you know. Yes, I attended the trial. I'm attending the trial every day. Hi, Gemma. I was there today. I've been there every day, including jury selection, actually. So ask any questions you might have, and I'll answer them as best I can. Okay. So October 2021. Okay, that was when the mountain bike ride happened. The argument about Kaitlin not being invited, and this is another direct quote. Colin's clearly a really intelligent guy. I would never use catalyzed this way, but he said her not being invited to go on the mountain bike ride, quote, catalyzed a strong discussion on our way home. I think it was in Arkansas. She was perturbed that I went on this ride with other female cyclists and did not bring her along. This was in Arkansas. So they asked what the status of the relationship was after the drive home from Arkansas in October of 2021. And for once, his voice got very strong and clear. And he said, it was ended very firmly. Clearly not for long. So 5 to 6 days after the end of his relationship with Kaitlin in October 2021, Mo Wilson was visiting friends in Austin, and that's when they had their fling. Him and Mo had both ended their relationships. They got together. They had a nice time. Kaitlin wasn't supposed to be in his house anymore, but she had her things still in his house, and she still had the code to the front door. Nevertheless, she was staying elsewhere in October of 2021. And again, this is the only time that anybody has ever said that Colin Strickland and Mo Wilson were romantic. Let's see. Well, Gemma, I'm glad you found me. There's other videos, but the other great place to go look for commentary is x.com or Twitter. I have stuff. I've tried to borderline live tweet this trial today, especially when Colin Strickland took the stand. Okay. Sorry for the pauses. I'm reading my notes. Okay, so during this sort of fling time in October of 2021, Colin had a trip scheduled to Marfa to do some training there, 3 days of about 6 hours of riding every day. Mo Wilson accompanied him and I believe did the training rides with him. This was when Kaitlin called Mo Wilson and this is a direct quote, confronted her on the phone. I don't recall exactly what. Moriah found it very strange. He said he had done, close quote. He said he had been very clear with Kaitlin that they were no longer dating. And Kaitlin had not even met Mo at this point. But I guess she heard through the grapevine that Mo had gone with Colin to Marfa, and so she called her and confronted her. They didn't get into detail about what she might have said. Mo stayed with Colin at his house for 2 to 3 days. He helped her find a vehicle to buy, I guess, so she could continue to move around in the country. These people do these massive tours through regions of the United States and get sponsorships and go to meet and greets and stuff like that, and then train with various people. So he helped her find a vehicle, and he says, quote, then she moved on to her next training travel arrangement. That's what they call it. So at that point, her sort of home base was with a friend in San Francisco. Hi, Kat. Her home base was with a friend in San Francisco. They remained friendly, but after she left at that point, they didn't continue or rekindle at any point any kind of romance. So this is where things get murky, and I got frustrated with the state because they jumped around a lot, and I had a hard time keeping track of which. There were so many races, there were so many events, there were so many times that he would meet up with Mo and see her, and I didn't get it all down. I tried. January and March of 2022, he ran into her again. He continued to, quote, facilitate introductions and put in strong words that she was going to be extremely dominant. At this point, the defense has to approach. They talk to the judge for a while, and they once again tell Colin Strickland he really needs to speak up. Yes, so in October of 2021, he did ask Kaitlin to pack her things and find somewhere else to live. And yeah, I told you all that already. But by about December of 2021, they had, quote, reconciled and, quote, got back together. He didn't have any meets with Mo at the time. He wasn't running into Mo anywhere. He doesn't remember if he was texting her much at that time, but the Colin-Mo connection was not real strong at the time that he got back together with Kaitlin. But he also, so because this is where the state asked him, is this when you realized that you weren't getting texts from Mo and realized that she was sending you texts and you weren't receiving them? And he says, I don't remember when that happened. But I'm guessing based on the fact that this is where the state put that question in the timeline, that this is when he realized, quote, they were simply not coming through, the texts from Mo. He doesn't know why. And this is also where he said that Kaitlin was more tech savvy than him. Kaitlin managed Colin's events. She had access to everything, his financial records, his passwords, everything, his Instagram, everything. His life was an open book with her, and she could access absolutely anything. So another weird, December 2021 is when they bought the guns. They rode their bikes to the gun shop. He said it was, quote, a culmination of reasons. And so paraphrasing, she had some road rage incidents. Not that she had road rage, but the other people did. And she was scared and frustrated. She also said she was scared about being on bike rides alone in the woods. And there is a large homeless population in the neighborhood where Colin Strickland's house is. And there had been, someone had broken into the house across the street and ransacked the place, was how he put it. And so they bought some guns. He asked, the state asked what happened to this Sawyer that, was Kaitlin's gun, basically. And he said, it was in the defendant's custody, so I couldn't tell you. So he referred to Kaitlin Armstrong as the defendant more than once, actually. I agree, Gemma, that she's unwell. I did not see a psychiatrist on the list, so I don't think we'll get a psych evaluation of her during the trial. I don't think there's been one done, but there's been a gag order, so I don't really know. That's one thing that's fascinating about this trial, is we're learning things as we go, because all the information's been so clamped down. Okay. Right, so there was a gravel race in Oklahoma in 2022. This was just another weird Kaitlin story. Mo placed second. I don't think Colin placed. He had a couple of races where he didn't place, but Mo was first or second, and he was very, very happy for her and congratulated her. In this case, in Oklahoma in 2022, so that would have been early 2022, before May, he took video of the final riders completing the course at the end of the day. He said it was a tradition. I mean, I used to do triathlons. You sort of gather around the people that are the last ones to come in, and you cheer them on because they finished and you're happy for them. They didn't win, obviously, but they're just a very supportive community. So he videoed these final riders coming across the finish line, and Kaitlin saw the video when he posted it on Instagram and texted him something like, "Give my love to Mo." He felt that this was passive aggressive, and he said he probably confronted her about it. They're setting up the argument that she was just extraordinarily focused and jealous of Mo. April 2022, there was an important race, he said, in California called the Sea Otter Classic. He rode his truck alone out to California. He planned to spend about a month traveling and training in California. He did not take Kaitlin with him. He talked about meeting up with Mo while he was out west because she was based in San Francisco. He competed in some races during this time, as did Mo. There was a big expo connected to the Sea Otter Classic, and him and Mo spent some time together at the expo and then parted ways. 4 days later, they got back together in Santa Cruz and went on a professional training ride together. He stayed with his sister in Sonoma County, and he was going to do a race that Mo was also doing, but he got really sick, so he didn't end up doing the race. Blah, 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 blah. I'm not sure why we got all of this narrative about April 2022, other than the fact that it was obviously the month before Mo Wilson was murdered. A moment of levity, at least for any cyclists I know, is the state said, "Is it lucrative to be a Red Bull athlete?" And Colin Strickland said, "No." No. Okay, who knew? In April, there was the Belgian waffle ride in San Diego, and Mo Wilson won the race. I didn't hear what was going on after that, but Colin Strickland said something like he doesn't like San Diego. I don't know. I love San Diego. Now, I got a little confused here, but in May of 2022, Kaitlin joined Colin. I don't know if she came back, like flew to California and came back with him or what, but they were driving somewhere together, and it had to do with West Texas and also like Marfa, and then also Tucson, Arizona. There was a race somewhere. He said there was I wanted to show her this beautiful town. Maybe he meant Marfa. I don't know. He has ties to Marfa, I think. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, he said the relationship was smooth at this time. I think what they're trying to set up here is, he did his West Coast tour, but then Kaitlin joined him for some driving and racing and sort of doing things between Texas and Arizona, and things seemed great to him. There were no issues. He said he had to stay in Marfa a few extra days to film a stupid video for a cyclist in Austin. I have to wonder what that was. The cyclist community, I know a couple people in it. I am not a cyclist, to be completely clear. I don't even own a bike, but I know some people in the cyclist community, and they can get very dramatic, like any tight-knit community, Okay, so who is Colin in relation to Kaitlin? Oh, well, he's her boyfriend. She was living with him. The conjecture is that Kaitlin allegedly murdered Mo Wilson because she was jealous, because she thought Colin was stepping out on her and having an affair with Mo. Why did he call her the defendant if he knows her? Because a lot of the language a lot of people are using is he's throwing her under the bus. I mean, I think she threw herself under the bus. She murdered this innocent woman. He's just telling it like it is. But I think he's calling her the defendant because he just wants absolutely nothing to do with her anymore. It's maybe a psychological, distancing tactic. He doesn't want to say Kaitlin. He did, I think he said her name a time or two. I'll have to pay attention on Monday and see if he says Kaitlin. I believe he did. But he also did definitely say the defendant. I guess that is kind of a way to throw her under the bus. It's like the guilty person over there, sort of, kind of. That's just sort of how I would read it. Let's see. There were a lot of the guy sitting next to me. We struck up a conversation more than once. There were a lot of questions about what route did you take to drive to Lockhart? He has a property in Lockhart. What route is a town nearby Austin? What route? I couldn't bike there. I keep interrupting myself. I couldn't bike to Lockhart, but if you were, Colin Strickland, you can bike to Lockhart without even batting an eye. Excuse me. What route would you drive to Lockhart? What route would you take to get to your dentist? What route would you take to do this? What route would you take to do that? And the guy next to me is like, wrap it up, dude. I think maybe this will relate to the Strava information. There's an app called Strava that these cyclists use, kind of like Map My Run, to collect data about the routes that they ride, and maybe some social media like going on as well, like, oh, who's riding this, who's riding that, what did you do? Just sort of a little online biking community app that includes apparently a very robust mapping feature. So I'm guessing that there's something related to the mapping that this state's going to tie all together with a big red bow at some point. They definitely are having, a Strava person is on the list of potential witnesses. At one point, the state said, would you sometimes drive your bike to your property in Lockhart? And Colin said, drive my bike? And the state said, I'm sorry, ride your bike? And it was weird and funny kind of at the same time. Later, or not so much funny, but provided maybe a little levity. Later, the state was asking him about how he would get to Lockhart driving versus riding. And he said, I would ride 130 because on my bike, I would ride 130 because there's a very wide shoulder and I can do that safely. And the state said I-30, and Colin's like, no, 130, not I-35. I didn't ride my bike on I-35. That's a big interstate that runs through the middle of Austin. You couldn't ride your bike on I-35. Also a moment of levity. Long discussion of motorcycle helmets, and how Colin would ride the motorcycle if there was someone on it versus not. I mean, there was so much data in this testimony that I'm not sure what it was all there for. At one point, probably after he realized that Mo's texts were being blocked and he's not the one who blocked them, he changed Mo's name in his phone to an alias. I'm sure if you want to know what that name was, you could go on Twitter and find it. I didn't make note of it. But he said he did it to avoid upsetting or having a confrontation with Kaitlin. We had a break. During the break, he put on a black face mask, and he just sort of like tucked in on himself, sort of had his hand like this and his face pushed way down, like he really curled up in on himself. And the bailiff kind of stood in front of him and, partially shielded him from onlookers, which I thought was kind. But it was, he looks rough. I mean, not in a bad way. I'm not being critical. He just looks like this has really wrecked him. And, honestly, you guys, he talked so much about what a phenomenal athlete Mo Wilson was. And I just think it really hammered home, not that it's any more or less tragic if somebody is a phenomenal athlete or not, but just the enormous tragedy here. Let's see. Gemma, a lot of people think he's a cad. I don't know about the money on his business thing. I've heard those rumors. I don't know. Those are good questions, Gemma, and I'll see what I can find out about them. I think her family has money, and boy, her lawyers, I mean, there's like 6 of them there every day, and it's not indigent attorneys. These are private attorneys. And they're good. I think they're really good. I just don't think they have much to work with. It's entirely possible that her money was helping him with his business. He also had a business redoing Airstream trailers, and that might have been where I heard her money funded the business. I don't know for sure though. Okay, you say that's the business. Yeah, I'll have to look into it. I think there's some articles out there too that you might be able to find. Okay. I think it was May 10th. It was definitely not the morning of May 11th, the day that Mo Wilson was murdered. But it was either the 10th or maybe the 9th. He went on a 3-hour training ride with a male cyclist and friend, as well as Mo, but she ditched after the first 30 minutes because they were training at a pace that was beyond the pace that she wanted to ride. So she went off and did her own ride. So he saw her the day before, presumably, if my dates are right, that she was murdered. And then obviously he saw her the day of her murder. He said she went on a ride on her own and texted her during the ride. And the state said, she texted you while she was riding? He was, yeah. She texted me. She texted me a picture of her ride. I don't know. Maybe she saw some beautiful scenery or something and wanted to share it with him and said, hey, let's get together this afternoon. So they did. They made plans. He was going to go pick her up. They went for a swim because it was very hot in Austin in that May, just like it was this last summer, just impossibly hot. Deep Eddy is a very nice, literally the temperature in the pool is very cold. It's a spring-fed pool. And then they went to Pool Burger. It's just right next to Deep Eddy Pool. They both swam, and then they got some food and had some drinks, and he took her home. While he was hanging out with Mo, Kaitlin tried to call him, and he didn't answer, and she texted him, and he did not respond. They ran into some friends at Deep Eddy Pool. They also ran into some friends at Pool Burger. He dropped Mo off, and then shortly after dropping her off, probably right about when he got to, so she was staying at a place between 17th and 18th, and then we saw his motorcycle go past the alley behind, just north of 18th. My guess would be probably right there where he hit MLK, which is 19th. He said shortly after he dropped her off, because 19th is a real busy street, so he would have had to stop the motorcycle anyway to be careful and take a left to go off to his home. He stopped his motorcycle and texted Kaitlin, quote, an alibi, his words, about where he'd been that evening. He told her he had been dropping some marijuana off for a friend's mom who needed it for pain control, but that wasn't what he was doing at all. An alibi is an interesting choice of words. So he went back home. He was puttering around in the garage. She drove up shortly after he got home. She was carrying a bag with a yoga mat. She didn't say, hey, I was just around there seeing you, with Mo. She didn't say anything at all. Later, when he asked her where she was that day, she said she had a waxing appointment. She was seeing a healer named Nasha, I think. I don't know. I'll get to it at the end of the notes. And she did some yoga. So, all right. About this time was when, and this was when we're discussing, the day of the murder, he was looking completely down. I'm not even sure his eyes were open. His eyes were either all the way down like this or closed. It's hard to tell, but he was definitely not giving eye contact to anybody. And he kept getting very quiet again, and they had to ask him to speak up. So when he went back into the house to get shoes, he did talk to Kaitlin. He said Mo had been killed. At this point, he didn't know how. Been killed. So the police did make it sound like it was a suspicious circumstance. I mean, why else would they be there interrogating him? So it wasn't natural. She had been killed, and he was the last person to see her because he had been hanging out with her. So he had to confess that he had been hanging out with her the day before, and that she had been killed right after he dropped her off. He was the last person to see her alive, and he had to go to APD to give a statement. He recalled that Kaitlin was shocked, but he didn't recall what she said. Stuff like that people who have a problem with Colin Strickland really are bothered by. My cat is ransacking the pantry now. I get where they're coming from. It's frustrating that he doesn't remember what she said. And then we'll get to another point later where he doesn't remember something that's really, really frustrating. And I think I've even read this before in affidavits or some such. So he's sticking to his story, and he's consistent in what he doesn't remember, but it's really frustrating that he doesn't remember it and a little unbelievable. He said he spent 6.5 hours at the police department. He's a quirky dude. Not 6.5, 6.5 hours at the police department. He said it was not pleasant. He was asked a lot of questions, including about the Jeep. And then once they started asking him about the Jeep, and he said, well, that's Kaitlin's Jeep. Then they were like, well, what's the relationship between Mo and Kaitlin? And he said he shared a lot of the information that he shared today. So once he started saying, well, I mean, that's not my Jeep, that's Kaitlin's, the gears started turning for APD, and they started realizing that maybe this was the lover triangle situation, because Colin was their initial suspect. Okay, let's see what you guys are saying. Yeah, I agree. It goes to all the dynamics behind the scenes that would drive Kaitlin to kill. Plus, I bet Colin got lots of attention from people, and Kaitlin was insecure. Indeed, he did. And he said numerous times on the stand today, I had a lot of female friends. I had a lot of male friends. More female friends is what he would say than male friends. He said that like 3 or 4 times at least. I had a lot of female friends. It didn't seem boasting. He just was matter of fact saying, yeah, I had a lot of female friends. I have no doubt that he did. He said it was quote, it was very shocking information learning that Kaitlin's Jeep was seen in the surveillance cameras near Kaitlin Cash's apartment. I bet it was. He did know that Kaitlin was at the police department at the same time he was there. He had heard that while he was there, but he didn't see her and didn't know, what the time overlap was as to when they were there. He said, I attempted to be fully cooperative. He gave the police his phone. He said, they asked for it. This is a quote. They asked for it and I gave it to them. The state says, did you voluntarily give it to them? And he said, they asked for it and I gave it to them. Little prickly at times. Little prickly. So after he left APD, he went to his father's house, who lives on Riverside Drive, sort of in just south of the Lady Bird Lake in the middle of Austin. Because his home was being searched, he couldn't go inside, and also his dad had a phone he could use. And then he went home, and Kaitlin was there. No one else, no lawyer hanging around anymore. He said he was drained and exhausted. He said Kaitlin seemed similar from my perception. He said, quote, we discussed what we had both experienced. He suggested she write a timeline of where she was while it was fresh in her mind. He asked, well, where were you? And then asked her to write it down and make a record of it. This is where he said, he asked whether she was at Moriah's apartment. She told him she was at a waxing appointment, a yoga class, and had gone to see a healer called Nasha's at 12th and Chacon. Okay, so I live very near to 12th and Chacon, and I can tell you it is almost exactly half a mile from Kaitlin Cash's house where Mo Wilson was staying. About 10 blocks. So she claimed to be, and I have no idea what this healer called Nasha is. We used to have an acupuncture place over here, but I think it was closed by then. And then we have a V-steaming place over here, but I think that was closed by then. I don't know. I have no idea what this Nasha's is. I've Googled it and have not been able to find anything about a healer called Nasha really, really near to where I live. And I know what's here because I can literally see 12th and Chacon from my upper balcony. So I know all the businesses around here for the most part. So they went for coffee, and Kaitlin expressed fears that there were listening devices in their house, and she wanted to get a new phone. And he said, well, why don't you go to Walmart for a phone? And so they went their separate ways, and he never saw her again until today. That was the last time he saw her. When he got back home, I don't know where he went. Either they said and I didn't listen, or didn't hear it, or they didn't ask. But she had left him a note saying she had tried to drive his mother's car to Lockhart because he was going to go to Lockhart, but it smelled like gas. So she bailed on that plan. And this is another thing that it's frustrating. He said he can't recall what else she wrote in the note about what she did after bailing on taking his mother's car to Lockhart. All very, very weird and very, very irksome. I would think that would be burned in your memory. First of all, after a weird story like I tried to take your mom's car to Lockhart, but it smelled like gas. So where's the mom's car? And what do you mean it smelled like gas? And really messy and weird right in there. on the device of a criminal defense attorney, not the attorney he shared with Kaitlin, a completely new and separate attorney, don't know which attorney, but he went and sought advice from a criminal defense attorney after spending 6.5 hours in the police department giving a statement. He gathered up some things and booked it out to Lockhart today. And that was it. So my final tweet for the day was, people are divided as to whether Colin Strickland was sad, annoyed, medicated, nervous, sick, like under the weather, playing the victim, or some combination of all of that. And it seemed to me like he is an utterly crushed shell of a human being. No problem with the comments, Jim. I appreciate it. Yes. So it was really sad. And Mo Wilson's family got up and left before they played the security camera footage where you could hear shouting and gunshots. I have no idea how it picked it up. It was amazing because it's pretty far away. So there is the garage, but it is a second-story garage apartment. So there's a garage apartment that's on the second story, and the house in front is a one-story, and then you have a street, and it was like 2 or 3 houses down after that on the street, front-facing camera. I think maybe it's because of the upstairs-downstairs thing. What you heard was 2 like shrieks of terror. Like you couldn't hear the words, but I would guess it was like no, right? Or don't. No idea, but it was definitely a victim's screams. I think it was 4 seconds. This is on my Twitter feed, and also on this map that I made that's on my Twitter feed that has all of the timestamps of all of everything on it. I think it was 4 seconds later, 2 quick gunshots, bang, bang, and then 6 seconds later, another gunshot. So she shot her twice in the head. Obviously, she fell to the ground, and then she shot her in the chest, just left of center, just kind of below the breastbone, right about at the heart. After she was laying on the ground. We don't know. We know that she circled in the area for 30 to 45 minutes. This is the other time gap we don't know. Colin Strickland dropped off Mo Wilson between 8:30 and 8:35. The gunshots were at 9:15. I have no idea what happened in those 45 minutes. I don't know if she sat in her car and stewed. I don't know if we don't know. We don't know. Let's see what else. I mean, you could even hear the ice cream man on the audio from the security camera, which was kind of heartbreaking. So much normalcy going on, and then this tragic thing happens. The only other thing I'll say is, so right at the end of the day, the state has not rested. Colin is still, he'll be back right immediately on Monday morning, and he'll start pick back up with the state. I think they're getting near the end of questioning him, but they definitely hadn't rested. The thing that they were talking about right before the end of the day. So there's this bizarre story about some vandalism that happened overnight. And it was the night of the murder or the night after that. I want to say it was the night of the murder, but maybe it was the next night. Colin's bike was pushed over, his motorcycle. Colin's motorcycle was pushed over. Some rocks, some landscaping rocks in his front yard were tossed around. Somebody left some money, a couple of dollar bills. It was bizarre. But here's the deal. And so, first of all, I have 16 PDFs. Sorry, you'd have to open each one to read this this interview. But I have the contiguous pages of the interview between Colin and one of the police officers about this vandalism where he described it. So if you want to hear, and it was, from the day or two after the murders, I haven't reread it in a long time. I can't remember whether, no, it wouldn't have been that initial meeting where they talked to him in the garage. It has to have been at the police department, because we saw sort of the end of that interview today and they didn't discuss it. We saw the whole 17 minutes. The jury didn't, but we did. But the defense is going to try to make hay of this. because at an early presser right before the gag order was put into place, one of the things that pissed off the state was the defense said, well, there was vandalism at Colin Strickland's house, and they're somehow going to tie this into, this is why Kaitlin is innocent, or at the very least, this is why Kaitlin fled. She was scared for her life. Someone had vandalized their home or something along those lines. This is my guess. So if you want to be sort of ready for what you're going to hear after the end of the trial day on Monday, maybe go read that interview. So I don't think they're going to be able to make Colin the killer, because I think that he might possibly have some kind of proof that he was back home. But one of the people I've talked to was wondering if she tried to frame him for it, if the whole plan in the first place was to kill Mo, frame Colin, and then be done with both of them. I don't know. They are certainly going to imply that the investigators didn't investigate Colin enough. That's what I think. I think they're going to imply that why did you take his word for it so quickly? They're going to hammer on the investigators were too inexperienced, they weren't following the rules and procedures, and then they got their suspect, who they thought that was their suspect, early, and confirmation bias made them just put on tunnel vision and only go for Kaitlin and no other suspect. Yeah, I don't know. He was very odd. Yes, Gemma, I agree. Kaitlin did the vandalism. I 100% agree. But in this interview that I'm telling you about, he said, well, she couldn't have done it because she's not strong enough to push my motorcycle over. It's very, very weird. I wish I'd read it more recently, but I just haven't. Again, it's on my Twitter feed. Julianne Holden is my Twitter. It's not Troublemaker Baker, although you might find me if you look for Troublemaker Baker, because that's like my other name on there. Okay, I think that's it, you guys. Wow, I've been live streaming for 1 hour and 11 minutes. Phew, but I'm glad to be done. My husband and I are going to go get a drink and a bite to eat. Today was hard. It was this whole case has been really interesting. I've never attended a murder trial before. So, you're focusing a lot, you're listening a lot, I'm tweeting a lot. You're trying to take it all in. You're trying to process it all. And there's just also the sort of like, am I going to get my seat today? And the person, next to me, is it going to be my friend that I made friends with, or is somebody else going to sit there? Because you kind of make trial friends, and just on and on and on. So it's been fun. I walked home today at 1.7 miles. I was so sort of like drained, and yet also like full of stuff in my head that I needed a good walk. So I took a 40-minute walk home, and it was absolutely lovely. The weather here in Austin is gorgeous right now. Okay, Gemma, I hope to be covering every day. The only day I might not be able to cover is the morning of this coming Tuesday, but if I can move my workout, I will. And I probably will be able to move my workout, because all the trainers at my gym are like, tell us what happened, because they sort of obliquely know about this story. They don't know the players personally, but of course, anybody in the fitness community in Austin has been paying attention to this trial. All right, you guys, thank you for coming and seeing me. This is normally going to be a baking channel, but during the duration of the Kaitlin Armstrong trial, it'll be a true crime channel. And if you guys don't know, I'm a mod, and have been for a long time, over on the channel Hidden True Crime. I can put it in the chat. I'm not going to try to put a link right now, but Hidden True Crime is where I help out John and Lauren and Mod. They covered the Daybell trial extensively, and boy, they've got amazing coverage going on about Corey Richins, Tim Ballard, continued discussion of the fringe LDS. I'm going to get this all wrong. I'm going to say it wrong, but the prepper movement, Visions of Glory, the book Visions of Glory. Lauren has been on the Mormon Stories podcast a couple of times recently, talking with John DeLynn about the very problematic things going on with the LDS Church right now. So I feel like I'm leaving one out. 8 Passengers. Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrand. Lauren has connections, deep connections with all of those cases. She's a former journalist. And now, honestly, someone said the other day about her, they're like, she's still a journalist. She's just a journalist on YouTube. And I think that that's mad props. I mean, she is still a journalist. She's a completely professionally trained journalist. And then John is a forensic psychologist. Fascinating people. Great analyses. Highly recommended. That's where I go for all my true crime. It's just that I live in Austin, so I'm doing this one because it's literally less than 2 miles. Well, it happened less than half a mile from my house, or half a mile, and then the courthouses and the jail, they're all connected here. They don't have to move her around like they do in other trials. They just bring her down through the back hallways. It's less than 2 miles from my house, so kind of want to see how this goes. All right, you guys, have a good night. Sleep well. I will continue to cover and tweet and get better at live streaming and have my notes more together so it doesn't take an hour and 15 minutes to cover, which probably only 45 minutes worth of notes. And I appreciate you coming and seeing me. Mwah! Good night, y'all.